A great man was asked, how do you bring up children? And he said, the first is by example, the second by example, and the third by example.
What are the top 10 things?
Albert, I should confess to you, it's a very difficult subject you're handling.
If you ever found Kelly anywhere sitting on a stool, the three legs of those two are faith, truthfulness, and enjoyment. Please don't pull any of these legs out. If you do, you will fall.
10 years of reviewing the past, situating the present, and predicting the future. Springboard, your virtual university, matriculates at 7 p.m. and graduates at 8 p.m. every Sunday on Joy 99.7 FM.
Springboard is a very significant intervention in our national life. The radio program, the virtual university, and the roadshow have become important factors in the development of our human capital.
Springboard is brought to you by Legacy and Legacy and Joy FM, and proudly sponsored by EcoBank, MTN, and Central University, with support from the graphic business.
Hi, this is
to them. Live from digital address GA0993341. Good evening, and with that timeless quote, I welcome you to tonight's edition of Springboard, your virtual university, right here on Joy 99.7 FM. Tonight, we promise you an unmissable experience. Springboard is brought to you by Legacy and Legacy and your superstation Joy 99.7 FM. And let me say a big thank you to our sponsor, MTN, Ghana's #1 network, and our print media partner, the graphic business. Thank you for joining us on Joy FM. And if you're watching us live on Facebook, you must be on Joy 997 or Albert Any Okran or Comfort Okran A. And it's an experience you don't want to miss in crystal clear pictures. My name is Albert Okran, and on behalf of the virtual academic board chaired by Comfort with support from Matthew, Priscilla, Amos, Emmanuel, and Jojo, I wish you a blessed Sunday wherever you're listening from tonight. Last week, we began a journey to understand the other side of motherhood, with our focus being on the unusual sacrifices women make to make life better for all of us. The focus was on celebrating the sacrifices, the effort, and just appreciating that side that we don't get to see because it's not talked about that much. And with the help of Dr. Angela Dwamena-Boagye and Mrs. Comfort Okran, we began to explore themes like the choice to keep a child when you begin the journey of pregnancy, making that choice, the changes to your physiology and to your psychology and every other G. And then we talked about postpartum depression, some of the challenges that mothers face after they have children. We spoke briefly about childlessness, and we signed off on the fact that women have to make sometimes very difficult career choices just to balance the equation, because by its very nature, it's so difficult to combine having children with your career sometimes. And so the choices that women sometimes make would require them to put their careers on hold. Along the line today, we'll talk to somebody who made that choice, put the career on hold, had 4 children, and then just when she had finished having them, lost her husband and struggled so hard to get back into the corporate life. That's the reality of our discussion today, that side that nobody talks about, but which are so critical to understand the full scope of motherhood. Tonight, I get to have the privilege of having Dr. Angela Dwamena-Boagye back in the studio, Mrs. Comfort Okran, and then we are joined by Dr. Isaac Newman-Atta, who's a clinical psychologist and an author and also a lecturer. We'll get some serious perspectives on these issues. And if you know someone who should hear this, listen, just WhatsApp them, call them, and say they should stop whatever they are doing and tune in to Joy 99.7 FM. Let me start. Good evening to everyone. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening.
Thank you for making time on a Sunday evening to be with us.
Thank you.
Dr. Atta, you are here for the first time. These are veterans, Springboard veterans. You are here for the first time. Welcome to Springboard.
And thank you for allowing them to sandwich me.
You're
privileged.
Nice to be.
How critical is the subject that we are discussing? I mean, you weren't here yesterday, but last week, but I'm sure you got a sense of what the discussion was about. How critical is it that we explore these themes for the benefit of our listeners?
Mothers are dying. they're dying. A lot of them are dying in there because of all the things they have to carry around. And I don't think we understand what motherhood is with pregnancy issues and all that. If men were to understand what they go through, I think our attitude towards them will change. Because a woman shouldn't come to a point where they have to decide to keep a child or not. If men understand, then behind that pleasure should be some level of responsibility. And so I'm passionate about women and especially with pregnancy-related issues. And so I think mothers are suffering unnecessarily just because men don't really understand what motherhood is.
You talk about the lack of understanding. Is it based on ignorance? Is it based on insensitivity? What is the driving force for this lack of understanding? Is it lack of empathy? Is it just not being able to appreciate because men are not women? I mean, help us to understand what the issue is with this lack of understanding.
I think men are groomed to become what they become when they are old. And so the grooming starts from childhood. Every responsible man had someone teach them how to be responsible. And that is the gap with making fathers out of men, in our generation. There are a lot of men who are not being raised to be husbands or be responsible fathers. So they just don't know what it is. They don't know how to go about it. Because I have had a privilege to be mentored by my father and other senior people who have taught me many things. And so I don't expect to be responsible to my family. It's something that you can't think about. It doesn't even come to mind. You can't think about your wife struggling, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. I don't want to use the word struggling and you are helping. You don't help your wife. Right? If you're doing something at home, it's not helping. We're doing what you have to do. And so if men are groomed to be fathers, a lot of men will change. But in a way, I put the blame on women in a way. Right? There are two blames I put on women.
I was waiting for that.
There are two blames. There are two blames. The first is that, yes. The first is that usually men become fathers when their mothers teach them how to relate to women.
You mean men become good fathers?
Good fathers.
Right.
When mothers teach them to be good fathers. Men run to mothers for comfort, but run to fathers for direction, actually. But the input a woman gives to a man, puts into a man's life, helps them to become what they have to become. The second blame I put on women is that every woman has the responsibility of choosing a responsible man to be the father of his children, of her children. And so behind pleasure is a product, and that product is a human being. And so if a human being behind that pleasure should be a responsible person. And so there, in our generation, there are a lot of young people who are too casual and too free and too I don't care about sex-related issues. And I think it's a major problem in our generation. And there are many women who are choosing. My engagement, for example, I remember when I went to the family house. I went, okay, he's a doctor coming. Everybody was sitting, okay, looking at me strangely. I sat down. Immediately, it was time for my wife to come. Everybody stood up, started clapping and screaming because, when I has arrived. But they didn't notice me, actually. When it was my turn, nobody got up, nobody clapped. And so when she came, they asked her 3 times. Yenji anama yenji, osi yenji. 3 times. So if she had said no, that would be at the end of my story. So I feel that women should, especially our generation. You see the way I'm
yeah, rascal.
I think it's one of the things on my heart, actually, that a lot of young people are becoming irresponsible with their choices.
I'll tell you what, that's why you're in the studio today. We know your heartbeat and the things that you think about. They are reflected in your writings and by the way, Dr. Isaac Niwanata just launched 5 books last week. This is the only man who can launch 5 books at a time. His first book's 5. We'll talk.
Amazing.
So those are the opening thoughts of Isaac, just trying to bring perspective to this discussion. And just in case you joined that, this is not an attack on men. It's not a men bashing program. It's actually unraveling why we get to be where we are as a society, what we should do differently, how we should think differently, and how we can get the better results than we are getting now when we look at families. Now, I would like to say something just before I go to my resource persons to bring dimension or perspective to the thoughts that Isaac has opened with. So it says, never judge people if you haven't walked a mile in their shoes. Never judge people. And following through from last week's program, it is evident that when you see a person behaving in a particular way, you are tempted to draw conclusions and say, why is she behaving this way? Is she doing something too much? And the things that we typically will say. But when you understand what people are going through and why they do what they do, you will change your perspective and appreciate them better. Angela, the story is told about a man traveling on a train, an overnight train in London, and in Europe, one of those trains that goes across countries. And there was this family, the children were crying and disturbing and shouting on the train. And the man was just trying to sleep, and he just couldn't sleep because he was in the same cabin with the family. And at a point, he told the woman, "Can you tell your children to shut up and let me sleep?" And she said, "I'm sorry we are disturbing you. They just lost their father yesterday, and it really has upset them. And so sorry about their behavior." The man said, "I'm sorry. Please let them shout as loud as they like, or as loud as they need to. But it's just about not knowing and not understanding what people go through, and then judging them very quickly, and not really even getting perspective." Angela, do we as people generally judge people without understanding their circumstances?
In my line of work, yes, I see that a lot. We're very victim blaming, let me put it that way, particularly people who are going through things. In the first place, you can't judge what's going on in somebody's mind or life by just looking at them, but we often arrive at conclusions based on that. And also, what we find is that even when we get to know that something happened to them or they're going through a particular problem, particularly those ones that we can't easily explain or we think have certain connotations, we usually stigmatize them a lot. And so we're used to certain problems. Oh, okay, somebody died. We're likely to be sympathetic. Somebody, lost their job. We're likely to be sympathetic. Somebody is very poor and we see their circumstances. Sometimes we are sympathetic. But if the person tells you that I can't sleep at night, I get nightmares all the time, I jump at everything that's thrown, on the wall, against the wall, you start thinking in a certain way, saying, "Hey, maybe I'm who you not, whatever is happening to this person, I don't want to know. I was raped." We talked about rape last week. I've gone through a marital dispute and I think I'm losing my marriage. Particularly if you're a woman, we often think, well, you must have something to do with the reason why your marriage is breaking down. So we are often not friendly in terms of our responses to people who may be going through all manner of issues, but everybody has something they are dealing with in their lives, except that we tend to think that we are better than the other person many times. And also, we don't give people a listening ear. You see, we are very quick to offer solutions, and it's across board. Lawyers, doctors, counselors, pastors especially, very quick to speak, very quick to offer solutions. But there's a reason why, and I heard this just this morning or last week, God gave us one mouth and two ears so that we can listen, because listening is where a relationship is actually created, a relationship of respect that says, I see you as another human being and I'm listening to you because maybe I could be of help. Even if I can't be of help, I can stand with you. That's something we don't know how to do at all in our kind of culture. And so I don't know where that came from, actually. Maybe because we have lots of proverbs and adages, there's always something to say for every occasion. And it hurts. It's really, it hurts.
The Bible says, every man, let us all be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Just to follow up from where Angela left off, that we are not the listening people. On the flip side, I also find that people sometimes look at the likely responses that they will get, which Angela just describes, and choose to suffer in silence, what Isaac was describing earlier. Do you find that in the course of your work, you sometimes will get somebody come and speak to you privately and tell you what they are going through, and I find that sometimes it leaves you stretched because some of the details they share with you are quite disturbing. Do you find that people generally opt to suffer in silence because of how we would react when they tell us what they go through?
Thank you so much for such a loaded question. It's definitely what happens is that the individual coming to you must have mustered up courage to come and ask, because generally as a society we usually show our pretty face, and anything that is not good we try to hide, we try to put a nice face to it, because we have a nice proverb that says that you don't wash your dirty linen in public. We also have another nice saying that you don't use your left hand to point to your father's house. And therefore, if unfortunately you have maybe suffered abuse, or maybe you have issues with your parents or your siblings or yourself, you can't find your space, or you just have a difficult day and you can't lift yourself up for a period of time. The fact that you're going to tell somebody that I'm feeling depressed doesn't sound. You shouldn't feel depressed. Because all said and done, you're fine. We are always fine, because we've never heard anybody say, when you ask them, how are you today? Today is not good. No, we must be fine, and therefore we translate that literally. We translate that metaphorically. Every aspect of our lives, we are always fine, and meanwhile you're not, and we don't have avenues as well. Let's say structured avenues that people can use to reach out. And so when you hear stories of someone who has reached out to maybe not unauthorized, but somebody in society, and the person, you hear the story, the story somewhere, or you're listening to the person, you're talking to the person, you're hoping to see the person for counseling. The person says that, do you know that the other day this person came here and talked about this and this and this? You're like, me too. If I tell you, my story would end up. So generally, there's nowhere to complain to, and then the culture also says that be quiet and be nice. And that's basically it. So we may want to shout, or we may like to scream, but we don't have space to scream.
20 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock. If you just joined us, we are talking about the other side of womanhood, and by extension motherhood. My guests for tonight, Dr. Angela Dramina-Boakye, Dr. Isaac Arthur, Mrs. Comfort, who can help me to understand the dimensions and perspectives that we rarely talk about in our day-to-day lives. And the story so far is about the fact that people often suffer in silence, partially because we don't even want to know. We would like to know about the fun part, and even when it's the parts that are challenging, we are selective about what we want to relate to. Some aspects of life, we just don't want to hear them. And let me add, even our faith-based confessions sometimes literally are dismissive, and asking people just to declare and you'll be fine. And without taking time to understand where they are and how they can be helped if we have the solution, that is. Today I would like to focus on the economic side of this discussion, because everything that we're talking about has implications. Everything that we're discussing has implications. So if a person puts aside their career, there are implications. And I'm going to ask Matthew to raise our external guest on the phone just so we get some perspective. But everything that we discuss has implications. And so when a person puts their career aside, a family that earns two incomes could end up earning one income. And sometimes the story that you get to hear is of somebody who says, listen, you gave me your word, I put my career aside, and now suddenly money has become a tool for manipulation. So that now when you are giving money, you are reminding me that it's your money, and therefore I'm supposed to be respectful, subservient because it is your money. And Isaac, how upset is that kind of thinking? or what do you make of that kind of thinking that says put everything that you have aside, and then you do, and then suddenly it becomes mine and yours, and remember that I am the one who gives you money to eat.
Generally, I think that marriage is supposed to fulfill a purpose. And so when couples marry and they know their unique purposes, it's not about dropping yours, dropping mine, but how can we gel everything together to achieve a certain purpose. And so usually couples may decide, to focus on one and leave the other, especially when there's some confusion about purpose and why we married. And I know God created all of us for a specific purpose, and that purpose is what should drive every decision we take. And so I go back to before marriage. Before marriage, you should be sure where you're going, and you should be sure that you can complement where the other person is going. And that is basic. I appreciate you and mommy because you're fulfilling a purpose, and that is where people find significance.
Last week she almost got to telling that part of the story that I love to tell, but she didn't say it. And that was the fact that when we started life, she was actually looking after me.
Yeah,
and it was just a privilege to have her look after me for a while, because I was trying to build a business and there was no money. I mean, we were building a business in a country that there's no capital, so you're literally building a business from zero. Yeah. So her salary was the chop money. We chopped it, Charlie. I chopped it happily. So anytime the coin flips one side or another side, you can't brag about it, because when you started you were hustling. So what's the big deal?
And I'm sure she was happy making you chop because we were going somewhere.
Because it was never a case of who's own it is.
Who's own, yes.
And it's continued that way, because we keep a joint account. Stop playing that. Joint account. Each one can say, "Hey, take a time." Yeah. and it's funny when you hear people say that. Yeah. Look, I have Diana on the line. Diana is going to help us to appreciate a dimension to this discussion that is sometimes sobering to listen to. Diana is an administrative officer. She put her career aside, raised 4 children, and after raising 4 children, just a year after, lost her husband 10 years ago. And she talks about the struggles she had to go through to reintegrate into the economic marketplace. Diana, good evening and thanks for joining us.
Good evening and thank you too.
Let me celebrate you for even speaking up. It's one thing we've been talking about tonight, the fact that people don't just speak up, they just would like to keep their story to themselves. But thanks for even opting to help us to appreciate these dynamics that you're about to share with us.
Thank you. Okay.
So for the benefit of our listeners, walk us through in a summary form the dynamics. Did I get it right that you actually put your career aside just to have children, and then after that found yourself, for lack of a better word, stranded? Help us to understand it.
I didn't really put my career aside. It was like during marriage, and then I think I have 4 kids. So when I got pregnant with the last one, I was having some challenges with my job. So I had to quit. And then I decided, let me quit and then come and deliver. So after I had my baby, I decided I wanted him to be like a year old, and I looked for a job. But immediately, I think he was just a year old, and then the unfortunate happened when I hadn't got a job. So that really put me into a struggle. So that was what happened.
So 10 years ago, you found yourself with 4 children. How old was the oldest at the time?
10 years.
So 4 children aged between 10 and 1 and
10 and 1.
And jobless.
Yeah.
Just help us to appreciate.
Jobless for 3 years before I got a job with an ICT head of it.
Diana, just for the benefit of our listeners, help us to understand the dynamics of being jobless, having 4 children, the psychological, just for the benefit of our listeners, help us to go to what it is like to be in that kind of situation.
It wasn't easy for me at all. It wasn't easy. From the beginning, even at the hospital when he was pronounced dead, I pretended as if I haven't heard anything. It wasn't true. But later on, I faced the reality. I was confused. I was depressed. I didn't know what to do. So I had to sit down and then think deep. Just go deep within and then come out with something. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but I think what helped me was the God factor that helped me. I hooked on the Lord. But you realize that sometimes the God factor is there, but you still have to do something. So I don't really have. I don't know how I made it. Honestly, I don't know how I made it. I think God just opened doors for me, touched the hearts of other people to just support and help, because it wasn't easy at all for me. I think that was what happened.
So, Diana, before we let you go, I presume that it just meant that the quality of life that you had to make some drastic changes at some point.
Yeah, changes like?
I'm saying the quality of life you were used to before.
Yeah,
you obviously had to make some very drastic.
Yeah, I have to make drastic changes. Yeah, I have to make drastic changes because everything was okay for me. And you know, sometimes with women, when we get married and we have everything going on well, we forget about the other side of life. So it was like a surprise to me, but I had to really change the direction of the journey. So I was faced with the reality, but it made me more stronger. I got bonded to the kids, and I had a better understanding of responsibility, the importance of priorities. You know, things that you feel this is the duty of a man, now it's facing you, so you have to do it. So it has helped me anyway, but it wasn't easy. I've become brave too, tough, and very confident.
Diana, one thing I can say for sure is that when you look back in the future at the children and how well they've turned out, and you look at how much effort you've put in to make them who they are, you will feel a sense of pride.
Yeah, I feel a sense of pride. You always have mixed feelings as well, but the pride and the joy is always there because there are a lot of people, and I think my job also helped me a lot. Central Aid helped me a lot. I met a lot of people and women who were in the same situation but didn't take good decisions, didn't go the right way, and they messed up. So I really have that sense of pride and joy when I look back because they've all turned out to become very good and sweet children. But you see others who don't get it like that. So I'm blessed.
Thank you very much, Diana, for sharing your thoughts with us. Obviously, because of your experience, you found fulfillment doing a job that deals with people who are struggling to raise the money for their fees.
Yeah,
and you found fulfillment in helping.
God channeled me through that place for a purpose. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you too.
Right. So back to the studio and exactly the dimension that I wanted to bring, the fact that if you look at the book of Kings, the Bible talks about the woman whose husband died, and it was not just an emotional issue but also an economic issue, and Dana describes having to make major changes to her lifestyle just to make it. I mean, Angela, how big an economic issue is all the issues that we are discussing in this pot, because we're talking about career, we are talking about survival, we're talking about even how to raise the children. The children are doing, there's homework to be done, there is extra classes to go for after school. Somebody says, I spoke to a mother whose story was just so amazing. She's working in South Africa. She has to go on is it trek or whatever in another South African country. She's there and they call her that the children were not picked up from school. You're not even in the country, and the children are stranded in school in South Africa. You're in another country, and that's the painful challenge of motherhood. Of course, she like Diana also ended up setting up a transport business for picking up like a place for children to come and play and so on, just because her own pain directed her business ventures. But how much of an economic issue is all this that we are discussing in this spot?
You can't run away from the economic issues because it's bread and butter, daily life. And that is the experience of women and mothers all across this country, probably across the world. That's also a big part of the whole question. Everything she lost costs money. And not only that, you see, we are not talking about somebody who was properly married and had somebody that was alongside her together. They were doing. There are people who don't even have that privilege of having another person in their lives. Okay, so single motherhood, that's there. Every decision you make costs money. What the children will eat, what you will eat. the stories that I've heard even from history of women who just drink water the whole day so that their children can eat the little food that they have. And then we also have all these things that have to do with even unraveling property issues, when somebody dies or there's a divorce and things like that. And the cost that comes with it. Huge cost. That's where support comes in. You see, sometimes women are forced to make these decisions because they don't find the support from family or from other people who can help. If you don't get that support, you're going to sink. Thank God for Dinah. She had support, and so she was able to bounce back. The God factor, of course, is very strong and would always encourage that. But we also need to find ways in which we can harness who can help when these things happen. Because, you see, if you don't have family support, even when you're having babies and your husband is still there, okay, you don't have other people who support you, you're in trouble. If your husband is not there, you are in trouble, okay? And then if you don't have systems support, so for example, thank God for Central Aid or, whoever was in the ICGC who managed to connect her to the support. What about the thousands and thousands of people outside who don't know where to look? So that's also another thing. And I mean, the economic costs are huge, Pastor. It's everything.
Let me split this economic issues into two, and I'll give one to Comfort and one to Isaac. And as is my custom, I'll give the difficult one to Comfort. So, Comfort, let's start with the issue of property that Angela mentioned. Angela talks about support, but support is ex post facto, as they say in her other profession. But let's go back to before, as they say before. Why is the property registered in the man's name alone in the first place?
Shouldn't be.
Why do people sometimes pay so little attention to ownership, documentation, joint, so that the problem does not occur in the first place for us to talk about support?
It may be changing presently because of education and so on, but in the old days, I mean, the land is there and you decide to build. You need that documentation because it is said that you have to get property, some agreement or some legal backing for you to build that property. And then who would usually go and chase the issue? But the man. And therefore, it is easier for him to sign everything. And there's really no ill feeling or the need for knowing what is there laid out. And so it's a case of a little bit of naivety, a case of it's okay. I mean, after all, he's my husband. Trust, total trust. Doesn't mean that if you decide that you're going to do it in both, it's lack of trust. But it's just that you trust that things would go well. They would live happily ever after. I mean, we talk about death do us part, but we really don't think of death until it occurs. Because sometimes I wonder why my father, at 72, he still didn't have a will when he died. Because at 72, you're getting to the end, but he still didn't have one. And so it's one of those things that's, even though we know we would go, we still believe that, there's still time. And we never think about that it's possible to be terminated any time from now. And therefore, we will put things in order. So it's basically we not being record-keeping folks, and we also having a lot of trust and not realizing that times have changed. But I believe that because of people who make the pain of hearing other people's pain and decided that I don't want to go through that pain, I want to be more secured, we would take care of such things properly.
When you come to Isaac in a minute, you are a medical practitioner and a clinical psychologist. Let me go to the lawyer who can help us to understand in a minute what to do. Angela, even when there are two of us and one was, let's say it was willed to one, maybe you inherited it from your parent, it is not out of place for that one to do an assignment to the two. Let me explain it in English. So let's say Albert and Comfort own a property. It was willed to Comfort, and so it is in her name.
Okay.
Comfort can decide that she's going to assign the property from Comfort to Comfort and Albert.
Oh, yeah, you can do lots of things with property, but you see, there's a cultural, let me put it that way, side to it. And it's very much also gender-based. Women were not supposed to be part of their husband's property. They were, in fact, they came in to help the man in their station of life. And it became law in Ghana, actually. So you come in to help your husband in his station in life, to get him to get along, but you have no right to any of the property that's made between the two of you. Okay, so if divorce happens, you are let go, and he can only maintain the children. Or if he died, yes, you are not part of what he has earned. And so you go away, and the children are subject to, they can be maintained by the family. Even that's optional in a sense. And it's changed over the years with a lot of advocacy and, all the way we have courts now. There's a lot that can be done with property, and that's one of the things that we would want couples to start paying attention to right from the beginning of your marriage. Right. What kind of property do we have? How are we going to treat it? Right. People think they can't have this discussion because if you raise it, then it means that you are a gold digger. Things like that. Or like my mother would say, there are three women, Bediwa, Boafwa, and Bekumwa. You greet your mother this evening in the name of the Lord. She's gone. It is 20 minutes to the hour of 8 o'clock. And that was the words of Angela Jamna, who is giving us the three women, Bediwa, Bedumwa, and then Bekumwa. Boafwa, Bediwa, and Bekumwa.
Explain it for the benefit of our listeners. Which one is Boafwa?
Boafwa is the helper. Bediwa is the gold digger. He came to kill you.
Charlie, are you a helper or a digger or a killer? Charlie, 20 minutes to the hour of 8 o'clock. Robert Mensah from Uzbet in Sunyani says, I'm watching and listening live all the way from Sunyani. Matthew Wete says, hello, great people of this nation. God bless you for your immense contribution. Onisferos Ike says, I'm following keenly. Albert, you're my man. Betty Akumate says, our society tends to label people who have persistent challenges as energy vampires who should be avoided at all costs. Janet Sunkwa Mills of JNM says, keep going, I'm tuned in. Right, this is the discussion about the part of motherhood that we never get to talk about, but we need to talk, so we are talking. Doc, let me ask you about this thing that is one of my favorite subjects. I'm going to write a thesis one day on the role of domestic assistants in the career of the professional woman. You get it right, you can go ahead and do doctorate. And I heard of somebody who takes her domestic assistant to the UK when she's traveling. You believe her, Charlie? She has helped her. She says, Charlie, this woman is good, and so I've also invested back in her. But there are some stories too, Charlie. There's some woman some couple that took their child to the hospital. The child was having very unusual ailments, and the doctor asked them, "Does your child drink alcohol?" He said, "Baby, alcohol." They say yes. Charlie, the child's liver was bent. When they go to work, the woman will just give the child the alcohol, and then when the child is sleepy, she can watch soap operas back to back and kill the child with liquor, hard liquor. So those are two extremes. But how critical is the house help or domestic assistant to the career progression of a woman?
Anybody who walks into the family, they come with their own issues. Anybody who walks into the family, and so physically, spiritually, socially, culturally, everything about them is what they bring. And those who are coming in to help, they are already in a way troubled. Yes, they're already troubled, because anybody who is actually really moving on may not move into another home just to clean and wash. Now we have professional, all that, but generally the kind of people who want to come and help us, they're already troubled. They're coming from a certain background, and so whilst they are coming in, they are coming with all that. But usually we normally consider cost and how comfortable we are with the people. We talk about we consider compassion. I met this girl on the streets. I look at her, she needs a certain kind of help, so let her come. So these things are the things that people usually consider when they want.
Some say it's a necessary evil. I mean, you are working in that bank on the high street. You close at 8. In fact, your husband closes at 6:30. You close at 8. So he probably should be the one doing the rice, and not you. And so if you are asking for the children who close at 3 and they come home, what do you do? So it's not even like it used to be about having mercy on that child from the village, but really I'm talking about the fact that it is a necessary support. Some get it from their mothers. I mean, like and that tends to be better because but it also comes with its own peculiar, because the grandmothers will sometimes would not let the children work, so that also has its own matter. But whichever way you look at it, some are saying that it's a necessary support system for the professional woman. Comfort, true or false?
I would say having in my case, I've had to use. I have had house help in addition to the mothers. Because so right now I even live with my mothers. And without them, I don't think I would have achieved much. So I find it as a necessary. I find that as not even as a necessary accomplishment, addition to enable me fulfill what I wanted to do. But in the first part of the life, I decided to do it myself, and therefore to do that I had to stop and work at home. So that shows you that you can't do it both ways. People need to realize that you need to have some help when you find out and get the help. If you decide that you can do it by yourself, then you have to work out a feasible timetable that you can feel comfortable with.
So it is 15 minutes to the hour of 8 o'clock. And why is this discussion so important? Because really, if your salary is what is keeping the family, as it was in the case in our early days of marriage, if you tell me you're stopping the job, it's me, who will fight you stopping the job, because we need the cash. How do you abandon the job and say you are coming home to look after the children, so that the children's school fees and the children's food, how will we buy it? These are real issues. All right, so we will come to this We'll come back to this discussion, but Janet Sunkwamos is back. She says, domestic helps, as a career woman, you need help. When you find a good house help, you treat them as partners in nurturing your children. And that's the way that Janet wants us to keep in this discussion. Partnership is a partnership.
Yes, it's a partnership.
So
I agree with
the economic partnership with domestic assistance in the execution of the professional mandate of the woman. That's going to be my thesis topic. It's now time for our data is king segment. It's a segment where we tell the importance of data in decision making, and we try to hunt for opportunities in numbers. And so today we want to focus on, guess what, corruption, because we've been looking at aid. Last week we looked at the amount of money that comes in from remittances versus the money that comes in from aid, and the money that is supposed to be foreign direct investment. We didn't talk about what we lose through corruption, but that's another discussion. But today I'm looking at another part of corruption, and a survey conducted by the World Bank and other partners shows that bribes paid in smaller companies account for 5% of their annual profits. In medium-sized companies, it accounts for 4% of their annual profits, and in large companies, 3%, less than 3% of their profits are paid in bribes. Now, that is on the corporate side. Let me come to the individual side. Nearly 75 million people in sub-Saharan Africa are estimated to have paid a bribe in the past year, some to escape punishment by the police or the courts, and many are forced to pay to get access to basic services that they desperately need. I'm not going to talk about the countries that we're leading. Some of those percentages are crazy. But let me end with this one. It says the findings from 7-country study, and this is by Afrobarometer, 7-country study in Africa: Ghana, Madagascar, Morocco, Niger, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Uganda, show that 44% of parents surveyed had paid illegal fees for schools that were legally free for their children. That means that there's free SHS, but they had to pay some money so that their children could get the services that they need in the schools. And that is the cost of corruption. But the summary of all that is that corruption costs the poor more than the rich. The poor have to bear the brunt of corruption even more than the rich. And so we can't bury this discussion. We need to have it, because if not, the poor will get poorer and the rich will get richer. Let me bring in Jojo for the Data is King segment. But if you joined us this evening, we've been talking about the other side of motherhood or womanhood, and trying to get perspectives about the various aspects of womanhood, the challenges that come with them. And along the line, we've been trying to say that this is not just an emotional discussion. It's not just an inconvenience issue. It is actually an economic issue. That means that if we insist on women having to leave their jobs just so that they can manage their families, and we don't talk about the support systems that make it possible and the partnership between husband and wife that make it possible, we may end up disenfranchising half of the labor force, with implications for GDP. So it's not just an issue about emotional disconnection or just inconvenience. This is a national development issue. We're going to come back to this discussion very briefly, but let me give a couple of minutes to our game changer segment. Maybe we'll find a game changer that will help families to get the balance that they need in their quest to achieve economic goals. Jojo, what's our game changer for today?
So today we're going to talk a little bit about purpose. So now imagine having a single mission driving the trajectory of your life for more than 2 decades. Now this was the case for Jordan Kinyera. Kinyera was 6 years old when his father lost their ancestral land due to a legal dispute, despite owning the title for the property. Kinyera's father was emotionally attached to the land because he grew up there and had buried his family members, including his brother, on the land. Now, according to Jordan, the loss of the land drove his father to depression and caused his health to deteriorate. Seeing the impact of that legal dispute on his father broke Jordan's heart. Jordan determined to study land law with the principal aim of winning back the property. This week, our game changer is about purpose. It took 23 years of hard work and sacrifice, but this year, Jordan finally won back his father's land. Now, what kept him going through those difficult moments? Because 23 years is a long time. Although the family experience had sparked the interest in law, he persevered because he had found his purpose. According to Jordan, he resolved to be a lawyer to help other people in desperate situations like his. Now, due to the displacement caused by civil war, the legal challenges Jordan's father faced are very common in Uganda. According to the advocacy group Namati, up to 50% of Ugandan landowners encounter ownership disputes. Your purpose is said to lie at the intersection of what you love, what people will pay for, what society needs, and what you are good at. In deciding to pursue land law to resolve his family's traumatic experience, Jordan Kinyera discovered a societal need that he could address and be paid for. He found his purpose. Having a purpose has a transformational effect on our lives. Research shows that people who possess a sense of purpose have a 15% lower risk of death than people who do not. Additionally, almost 60% of companies with a clear purpose grew by over 10% in the last 3 years, whereas companies that have low or no sense of purpose, 42% of them, experience negative growth. To close, I would like to leave you with a quote from W. Clement Stone. Definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement. This week, let's focus on situating our purpose and commit to pursuing it relentlessly. This has been The Game Changer with Jojo Okran. Have a phenomenal week.
Thank you very much. And I love the quote that says your purpose is at the intersection of what you love, what people will pay for, what society needs, and what you are good at. I think I should paste it on my wall.
You should.
You do all.
I'm missing the second one.
Which one is that?
What people will pay for.
Yeah. Charlie, you can do it and be happy, but happiness does not pay bills. let's wrap up on the injustice. I mean, I know we are celebrating, but it's not out. One of the ways to celebrate people is to also point to the things that we don't do right and put it right so that we can have perspective. One of the mysteries I would like us to unravel before we close. I mean, how do you call your mother a witch? I mean, just to close on that, the person who raised you, why is it that when people grow old, suddenly the same person who showed you all the love and compassion, you honestly believe that they are witches? Doc, let's start with you. I mean, there must be an explanation because it's widespread. So why do people suddenly see elderly women as witches?
I think it's our culture, our tradition, and also our typical religious beliefs that has no basis actually, because we respond to what we hear and we act based on what we've heard. And I think that if people value maybe some role models in their lives, whatever they tell them, they will take it. So you look at even our religious leaders and people around and how they go about some of these things. I think that influences a lot of people into these things. And so I'm not sure that a young person will just get up one day and say, my mom or someone is a witch. Maybe based on what he or she has heard from someone who they trust. If someone comes and say, I had a dream and I saw your mother, stabbing you in the chest, she's a witch. Our culture permits it. Outside the country, they'll just throw it away. They don't even listen to those things.
But I mean, I'm going to come to you, Comfort, but just a bit of knowledge about dementia. A bit of knowledge about dementia will tell you that just after eating lunch, the old lady says, I've eaten the whole day.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand dementia, you will call her a witch. Because he said, you see what I was talking about? I mean, very weird behavior, which is purely explainable with a bit of an understanding about a medical condition.
And with what we are talking about, everything we've talked about today is in the domain of mental health. Your thinking, your feeling, and your behavior. That is mental health. And so we really have to assess, if you look at even Ghana and the way people respond to situations and stuff, people are unwell and they need help. If you look at even all the conflicts in marriage and all the things we've talked about, it's in the domain of mental health. And people would have to seek help. Every thinking, any thinking, feeling or behavior that is affecting you, you are mentally unwell.
This is a subject you can never complete. I've concluded.
I told you
I've concluded.
I think you should dedicate 5 shows to it.
Comfort, your closing thoughts for today.
Well, my closing thoughts center on the need for individuals to realize that motherhood is a joy, but it also has challenges. And therefore, if you have the privilege of being in that space, you take the joys along with the challenges and try to see where God can give you the grace to be the best that you can be in that in your quest to be a good mother. So it's a joy, but it also has challenges.
Thank you very much. Angela.
I don't know what to say, actually. First thing running through my mind, I miss my mom. But I think that there's a myth about motherhood that doesn't translate to womanhood. I think there's a dichotomy in our heads that we love our mothers, but we can't deal with women. It's something that I'm trying to decipher, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to, as a nation, look at it, the way we put mothers on a pedestal, but think women belong to the background. Women will become the mothers, and if we want them to do their best, then we need to start merging our thinking around that, okay, so that we can do something better for women who would also, and who are the mothers of our nation. So for me, that dichotomy is still a strange thing to me, mystery. We need to really talk about it. Can I show you an example? That lots of men love their mothers, but they think their wives are competing with them. They would do everything for their mothers, but there's something about the wife. That thing, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's also in the wider culture, this thing about witchcraft. That
Isaac,
woman is a witch.
30 seconds. Closing thoughts.
I think men would have to pay more attention to women, and we shouldn't think we are doing them a favor. If you're working at home, it's your responsibility. We all clean the dishes, we all wash, we all cook. I think that's what marriage is.
Are you a good cook?
Yeah, I do cook sometimes, but not all the time.
Okay.
But my meals are very, very, very good. If I decide
if I
to
may
cook.
say so myself.
Yes.
All right, it's 2 minutes now. 8 o'clock. And
Before this, I'm going to use registrar's discretion. I just want to give a shout out to Angela for the ARC Foundation, for the home that you have for
the shelter.
The shelter.
Oh.
Yes. I think they'll be opening very soon. So if you can just take a few more minutes. I'm sorry.
We actually have half a minute, but
Yes.
we'll do this again.
No.
And I want us to talk about the shelter. I'll do an exceptional arrangement to throw light on the shelter so that we can ask for help and do it. Because you see, when you talk about Central Aid, I was smiling because it is somebody's initiative that you said, I will do it against all odds. And now thousands have benefited from education.
That's
so
right.
When we like something, we must put our money where our heart is.
Thank you.
Kwesi Brew in Chicago says, I like the discussion and I'm listening with rapt attention. Your guests were great and keep it up. All right. So I give you my guests were great. I should bring them back again. All right. So coming up next is the Walk with Jesus, and the topic is security at churches in the wake of the terrorist threat. Reverend Ransford Abose will talk to Bishop Dr. Fred Kranchi Mensah and DSP Efia Tenge, the Accra Regional Police PRO. All right. Happy birthday to Vera Lai of ICGC Open Heavens. Enjoy the evening. I want to say a big thank you to my guests, Comfort, Isaac, and Angela, for making time to join me this evening. My name is Albert Okran, and on behalf of Matthew, Emmanuel, Priscilla, Amos, and Jojo, God bless you. God bless you, and God bless you. Good night.